Hey everyone, welcome to the news section. In this section, I want to talk to you guys about foreign key. But before we go through this foreign key, I want to give you basic information about the primary key. Actually, in the previous examples, in the previous lectures, we saw what is primary key, but I will say it again. Primary key is a key in relational databases that is unique for each record. It is a unique identifier such as a driver license number, telephone number, or the vehicle identification number. And the sum of the features of primary key is it contains a unique value for each row of data. It cannot contain null values. Let me explain the last thing. It cannot contain null values. I will come here. You can see here I have a new table. And this new table has two columns. One of them is ID, one of them is name. You can see here in this ID column, I have kind of like of key here, key icon. And this ID is the primary key. If you click here, you will see this key icon. But if you, let's say, remove this, you will see this is just a basic ID. Okay, I will make this primary key. I will come here. You can see I just gave here a name to this ID, to this new table's first record, but I didn't give here any ID. If I want to click apply and apply here, I should get an error. The error says field ID doesn't have a default value, and that means you cannot keep this ID a null because we said a primary key cannot contain null values. That is why you cannot keep ID null because it is primary key. Okay, guys, let's close this. I will say don't change. Here you can see this. This is a primary key. We've talked about this primary key, and let's talk about now the foreign key. Okay, guys, the foreign key is a little bit complicated than primary key. A foreign key is a field in one table that refers to the primary key in another table. A foreign key is a key used to link two tables together. For example, let me draw here one table, actually two tables. I will say this is my first table. Let's say this is a teacher table, and I have here the student table. This is a student table. And the primary key is the key used to link two tables together. If you have a key that holds these two tables together, that is called foreign key. Okay, guys, that is called foreign key. This holds two different tables together. And also a foreign key is a field in one table. For example, in this student table, I have a foreign key. Let's write here, I have here foreign and key. And this foreign key in one table refers to the primary key in the another table. And let's assume I have here ID in the teacher table, I have ID. This foreign key refers to this ID, and that is called also foreign key. Okay, but I will not give you information, basic information about this foreign key because I want you to guys see this, and after seeing this, after explaining this with examples, I will give you basic information. And by the way, I have here text file. I will share this text file with you. You can get it from the description, video description. Okay, I will create here two new tables, and I'm gonna show you what is the foreign key. Let's drop this table. I will say right click and the create table. By the way, I will not create this time our tables using SQL because in here we will use primary key, and when I use primary key with the SQLs, the students get confused. That is why I will use this Redis stuff for creating this table. I will say first of all student, okay, and I will write here student underscore ID, and I will write here name. Okay, you can see student ID is the primary key, not null, and etc, etc. I will say apply, and finish. You can see this is my student ID, and I will student ID and the name, and I will create here a new table, and I will name it teacher. Okay, I will say here ID, and I will write here the name. Okay, and this is my primary key. You can see here this ID is my primary key. I will say apply, apply, and finish. But let me give you, let's close this. Let's also click here. Okay guys, let me show you one thing. If I want to write here in the student table, if I want to write teacher ID, okay, if I write here teacher ID, this will be like this. For example, I will write here teacher ID, and here teacher will be ID and name. And each student has the one teacher, okay? But one teacher has two or more students. That is called one-to-many relation. Okay, for example, let me draw this also. For example, in this teacher table, I have just one teacher. Let's write this teacher is Jim. Okay, and let's write here just a line. Okay, I will write here the student table, and in this student table I have Mary. I have here another, for example, I have Jack, and here I have Sam. You can see this Jim can have Mary, also Jack, and also Sam, because one teacher can have multiple students, and that is called one-to-many. Okay, this is the one-to-many relation. In the SQL interviews, it is so famous question. Okay, they can ask this. Okay guys, this is Jim, and Jim has Mary, Jack, and Sam, and that is it's called one-to-many relation. Let's go back to our table, and now I will write a teacher, and I will write the students that refer to the teacher. For example, let's click here and let's click here. Okay, but before we clicking to this student, I want to create here the new column here, and that column will be teacher underscore ID. Okay, I will say apply, apply, and the finish. Let's not close this. I will come here and here. For example, in this teacher, I will say my first teacher is, let's write Richard. Okay, this is my first teacher, and my second teacher will be Stefan. Let's make this a little bit longer. Okay guys, I will say apply, apply, and the finish. You can see I have here two teachers. One is Richard and the second is Stefan. Let's come to this student, and I will write my first student ID 1. Name is, my first name is Mary, and my first teacher ID of this Mary is 1. And that means, let's come to this teacher, Richard is the teacher of Mary. Okay, I will write student ID 2, and the name I will say Laura, and this Laura has student 2. Let's write one more. I will say 3, and I will write here another man, and this man, let's write another name. I will say Jim, and the Jim has also Richard. Okay, I will say apply, apply, and the finish. You can see here I have 3 different students, and these students have 2 different teachers. Mary has teacher 1, I mean Richard. Laura has teacher 2, this is Stefan, and Jim has teacher 1, and this is Richard again. But writing like this doesn't make any sense, because it is just the numbers I wrote here. It doesn't make any sense. For making this any sense, we should use the primary key. And now I will explain this primary key. Sorry guys, I will explain this foreign key, and I will explain what is foreign key. Without writing here foreign key, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, we should write here foreign key. I will come to this student. You can see here I have the foreign key here. I will clear this. I will click here, and we should give a name to our foreign key. You can write here whatever you want, but I will write teacher underscore ID. and we should write the reference table here. This is my student table, okay? This student table, let me write this again. Let me draw this because this lesson kind of like complicated. This is my student table, okay? And this is my teacher table. And we said the primary key is the kind of like connection between two tables. This student table has a foreign key that refers to this teacher table. And you can see here, I have here the reference table, and the reference table is completely this teacher, okay? Teacher is my reference table, and the student is my, let's say, child table. I will come here, let's close this. I will come here and I will say, as a reference table, I will say, you can see here demo.teacher. And you can see here, actually, I have teacher ID, name, and the student ID. For creating foreign key here, actually, I will get an error, and I will explain this error to you. Let's click on this, and I will say ID. You can see, create foreign key. The selected columns doesn't have compatible types. Let's click OK. I will come to this student table. Let's close this. Let's also close this. I will come to this student table. You can see here teacher ID is actually varchar. And when you want to create a foreign key, you should give as a data type. You can see here I'm having a problem. You should give as a data type integer to your foreign key. I should come here. I should change this. Let's come here. I should change this teacher ID to the integer. Okay. I change this to the integer. I will say apply, and the finish. And after writing here like this, I will say teacher ID as a, you can see when I say ID, actually I see a problem again. Let's close this. I'm gonna create this again because it's kind of like a log problem. I will say foreign key, and the teacher underscore ID reference table is teacher, and the teacher ID is the ID. You can see here I didn't see any error because in the previous example my teacher ID was the varchar, and you cannot use varchar as a foreign key. Your foreign key should be integer, okay, because your ID is your integer. By the way, this ID is coming from teacher. Referenced column is the referenced column of the reference table, and ID is the column of teacher table. I will say apply, and the finish. Okay guys, until here we've done so complicated things. I'm gonna show you one more thing, and I will stop this video here, and in the next lecture we will continue to this video. I will come to this database and the reverse engineer. You can see here I will click on this and I will say next, and I should write my password. Okay, and the next, and I should choose this demo, next, and the execute. And last of all, I will say next and the finish. You can see here I have a model here. This is the model diagram, EER diagram. You can see here the teacher, I have a teacher and I have a student. Let's write like this. Let me write like this. Okay, this student ID points this teacher because your student table has a primary key with this teacher, and the primary key is the connection between these two tables. When you click here, you can see this teacher underscore ID, and the teacher here ID of this teacher table is kind of like emphasized. Okay, and that means this between this teacher ID and between this teacher ID of this teacher, we have a connection, and that connection is called foreign key. Okay guys, that connection is called foreign key. This is my let's say basic model. If you don't get this, you can ask me a question. I will help you to get this model. You can see it is so good, it is so cool thing. Okay guys, let's close this diagram, or let's not to close. I will close this. I will say do not save. And you can see here I said my foreign key name is teacher ID, reference table is the teacher, and the referenced column is the ID. I will close this and I will come to this, let's say student. You can see here this, when I write here teacher ID, in the previous example I didn't use foreign key. That is why this teacher ID doesn't make any sense. But in this situation, I said this teacher ID has a connection with this, let's close this, with this, let's open this ID, okay? Let's get over the concept one more time. This teacher ID has the connection with this ID. When you write here Mary teacher ID in here 1, that means Mary's teacher is Richard. When you write here 2, that means Laura's teacher is Stefan, okay? And that is what that's what is called is primary key. Okay guys, let's finish this lesson here. I don't want to make this lecture so long. Let's see you in the next video.